So, you remember when we say that two sets have the same cardinality?
Yeah, and there is a bijective map between them.
Right. So, we say that two sets have the same cardinality, two sets, let us say A and B have the same cardinality if there is a bijection. There, I could say there exists a bijection F from A to B. So, we have seen that there are sets with just one element, they have cardinality 1, they all have the same cardinality, right, and sets with two elements, they all have the same cardinality. But what about infinite sets? Do all infinite sets have the same cardinality? It is tempting to think, well, if it is infinite, it has more elements than any finite set, and if you have two infinite sets, they should, I mean, they are both infinite, so they should have the same cardinality. In other words, there should be a bijection between any two infinite sets. Surprisingly, the answer to this is no, and this was something startling that was discovered by Cantor, one of the founders of set theory, and he showed that no, there can be two infinite sets for which there is no bijection between them, and this proof that Cantor gave is called Cantor's diagonalization argument. Okay, so now I will jump to that. Okay, so so let me give you the simplest example of Cantor's diagonalization argument. So, I will take A to be just our favorite set, the set A is going to be the set of all natural numbers. B will be something a little more complicated. B will be the set of all sequences, all binary sequences. By that I mean the set of all sequences A n where so this index n is A1, A2, A3 and so on, where A n is either 0 or 1. So, all infinite sequences of zeros and ones. So, a typical element of B is going to be something like it's going to be a sequence. So, we are going to have like something like 1, 1, 1. This is an element of B, all the terms are 1, A1 is 1, A2 is 1, A3 is 1, or you could have something like 0, 1, 0, 1, or any sort of sequence of zeros and ones.
So, when you say sequence of zeros and ones, you mean the exact order in which they appear matters?
Yes, yes, the order is very important. So, this is A1, this is A2. So, this 0, 1, 0, 1 would be different from 1, 0, 1, 0. These are different sequences. They are of course as sets, these are the same, they have zeros and the set of consisting of 0 and a 1, but now we are thinking of these as sequences. So, the order in which they appear is very important. Okay, now suppose that f is any function from A to B. I am not assuming that it has to be surjective or injective or bijective. So, then we can try to put some notation down for f. So, f of 1, okay, what is that? That is an element of B, which means it is a sequence of zeros and ones. So, let us say it is the sequence, its first term is A11, its second term is A12, its third term is A13 and so on. F of 2 likewise, let us say it is A21, A22, A2 3. So, these Aij, these are all 0 or 1. F of 3 is going to be A3 1, A3 2, A3 3. Okay, now here's Cantor's really clever idea. What Cantor does is he considers the following sequence. So, let us consider the sequence B equal to 1 minus a n n for all n in n. So, what this means is that B is the sequence 1 minus a1 1, 1 minus a1 2, not a1 2, a2 2, 1 minus a3 3, and so on. So, an interesting observation that Cantor made is that this sequence B cannot be equal to f of n for any natural number n. So, B is not equal to f of n for any n in n. Why is that? Because look at the nth term of B, Bn, well it is 1 minus a n n. So, this is not equal to a n n, which is f of n, the nth term of f of n.
So, when you say 1 minus a n n, you mean if a n n is 0, this is 1, and if that is 1, then this is 0.
Exactly. So, when I say 1 minus a n n, so this Bn, what he has done is he has constructed a sequence that the first term differs from the first term of f1,
Okay.
the second term differs from the second term of f2,
Okay.
the third term differs. So, it is different from, so Bn is not, the nth term of B is different from the nth term of Fn. And what this means is that B cannot be equal to Fn for any natural number n.
Very clever.
So, what this means is that B is not a value of the function f,
Right.
and so f is not surjective. In effect, what we have shown is that there is no surjective function from A to B. There does not exist any surjective function from A to B, and a bijection, well, that is a surjective function, right, it is for surjective and injective. So, there cannot be any bijection from A to B. So, what we have here is two infinite sets A and B. A is the the most natural infinite set, and B, well, it is a set of binary sequences. They are both infinite, but there is no bijection from A to B. And intuitively what we would say is, okay, so you could construct functions from A to B, you can think about it, such functions may be injective, but they will never be surjective. And what this intuitively means is that B is a bigger order of infinity than the natural numbers. The natural numbers, somehow the rooms of the Hilbert Hotel, this is the smallest order of infinity that we have, and then you can get bigger and bigger orders of infinity. So, Cantor did not actually stop here, this is the simplest example of Cantor's argument. Let me explain to you how you can get even bigger. So, you could ask, is B the biggest infinite set, or can we get even bigger?
Right.
And Cantor actually went much further to say that there is no end to how big infinite sets can get. To do that, I want to just firstly talk about power sets once again. So, remember that if you have a set A, then the power set of A is the set of all subsets of A, including the empty set and the full set A. So, for example, okay, so what is the power set of the set with 2 elements 1 and 2? So, that has 4 elements, right? There is the empty set, there is the singleton set 1, the singleton set 2 and the full set 1 comma 2. The cardinality of the power set is clearly larger than the cardinality of the set 1 comma 2.
Yes.
And what Cantor argued was that this holds even for infinite sets. There is no bijection from a set to its power set.
Okay.
But to make Cantor's argument easier to understand, I am going to think of power sets in a slightly different way. I am going to define another set, I will call it f of A. Okay. So let f of A denote the set of all functions g. So, all g such that g is a function from A to the set 0 1. For example, if A were the set of natural numbers, then f of A would be all functions from natural numbers to 0 1, which is just the set of all binary sequences.
Okay.
Okay. And the observation is that f of A and the power set of A are really the same thing in 2 different disguises. So, observation is that there is a bijection So, when I say nice, you will agree that it is nice once I tell you what it is. From power set of A to binary functions from A to the set 0 1. So, how do we do this? You define it as follows. So, I have f. So, it is a function from the power set. So, it eats a element, a subset of S, A, let us call it S, f of S. And what is the, what does it output? It outputs a function from A to 0 1. So, this is now a function f of S. So, I need to put in another argument here, A, an element of A. And this should just be, I say it is going to be 1 if A belongs to S and 0 otherwise. This is for all S subsets of A and all A elements of A. And it is not difficult to see that this is a bijection. Certainly nice, I did not really, the definition, I have this symbol S and A and I have to just put them together somehow. So, in this example, we have the power set of 1 comma 2. So, let us take this subset 1. What function does it correspond to?
Well, I guess the function which takes the value 1 on 1 and 0 on 2.
So, f of 1 is 1 and f of 1 of 2 is 0. This is because this element 1 belongs to the set singleton 1, whereas this element 2 does not belong to the set singleton 1.
Right. Yeah. So, I see what you have done there. So, you are thinking of 1 and 0 as something like, let us say, a light bulb being on or off, for instance. So, you are saying if I have a subset, if I have my set A, I will think of, say, a light bulb, each element somehow being a light bulb, and a subset as being just those light bulbs which are on in some sense.
That is right, that is a very nice way of thinking about it. So, a subset is just you switch on the light bulbs of the elements of that subset.
That is what this function does.
So, what I am going to do is to explain Cantor's argument, I am going to use this f of A as a proxy for the power set of A.
Okay.
And it's essentially now Cantor's general argument is just going to be the same as what I did with sequences. There the set A was the set of natural numbers, f of A was the set of binary sequences. Now it's going to be the set of functions. So now suppose, so I'll just mimic what we did with the natural numbers. F is a function from A to f of A. I am going to define a function g g has to be a function from in f of A. So, g in f of A. So, this is going to be the sequence B that I had defined earlier, and it is going to be different from all the values of f. And what is the formula for g? So, g of A is going to be 1 minus f of A. So, what is f of A? F of A is a function from A to 0 1.
Right.
So, I can take this and evaluate it at an element of A.
Right.
And so, I put an A again here.
Right.
So, what this means is that if f of A takes the value 0 at A, then g of A is 1. If f of A takes the value 1 at A, then g of A is 0. It just flips the value.
Right.
And so, what we have is that g of A is not equal to f of A at A.
Right.
So, g of A is not a value of f.
Right.
F is not surjective.
Because g, the function g is not there in the image of this function f. That's
Correct.
Okay.
G is an element of f of A which is not in the image of the function f.
Right.
It's a little confusing because they are functions and then their values are themselves functions.
Right.
But the idea is exactly the same as with sequences.
Right.
And this is the general version of Cantor's diagonalization argument.
Okay.
So, instead of starting with the natural numbers, for example, we could have started with the power set of the natural numbers, and its power set would be an even larger infinite set than the power set of the natural numbers. And then we could take the power set of the power set of the, you could just keep iterating this construction, the power set of the power set of the power set of the natural numbers and so on. And you could continue this indefinitely, getting larger and larger sets. There is no end to the largeness of different infinities, between which there are no bijections, by the way. So, they could be infinite sets. Given any infinite set, Cantor's argument finds you an infinite set that is even bigger.
So, there are sort of infinitely many types of infinities in some sense.
That is right. And the infinitely many types, what do you mean by that infinity itself is kind of, it's mind boggling.
Right.
Yeah.